call the meeting to order. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Wyomissing Area School District stands in honor of Mr. Randall Hinsey. Mr. Hinsey passed away recently and served 11 years as a Wyomissing Area School Board member. We thank Mr. Hinsey for his contributions to the Wyomissing Area School District and support his family and friends. I would like to share some comments submitted by Judy Stout, a former Wyomissing Area School District Board member. I knew Randy as a devoted school director during the years we were on the Wyomissing Area Board together. He represented his constituents in West Reading and all the students of the district with a sincere regard for what was in their best interest. Randy was fiscally responsible while putting the best interests of the students in the forefront of his votes on issues. Together, we expanded the AP course curriculum, built the additional athletic fields, restructured and restored all the buildings after closing the Wyomissing Elementary School, strengthened 3 community collaboration, and many more undertakings. I could count on Randy to be cautious, well-informed, and sure that his vote was well-researched before committing to any project. Our board did many good and lasting projects for our school district, and Randy was an important part of it. With these thoughts, we'd like to take a moment of silence. Thank you. All right. Is anyone recording this meeting? Mr. Arnst, thank you. Mr. Boyer, can I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Harenza. Mrs. Kuhn.
Here.
Mrs. McAvoy.
Here.
Mrs. Phillips.
Here.
Mr. Pottieger.
Here.
Mr. Redner. Mrs. Taylor.
Here.
Mrs. Waxler. Mrs. Zolkowski. 5 in attendance.
Thank you for our visitors coming and viewing our meeting. Our next school board business meeting is scheduled for Monday, August 28, 2023. There is another committee of the whole meeting scheduled for September 11th. Also, the board held an executive session on July 31st of this year to discuss a legal issue. Is there any public comment this evening? Okay. So we will move on to some routine approvals. It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approve the minutes of the June 26, 2023 Board of School Directors meeting. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Second. Any discussion? And this we can do by a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed? Great. We also, on our agenda, have the resignation of Maria Zolkowski, who has resigned as school director. So it is recommended that the Board of School Directors accept the resignation of Mrs. Maria Zolkowski. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please, Mr. Boyer?
Mrs. Kuhn.
Yes.
Mrs. McAvoy.
Yes.
Mrs. Phillips.
Yes.
Mr. Pottieger. Yes. Mrs. Taylor.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
On behalf of the Board of School Directors, I'd like to thank Mrs. Zolkowski for her service to the Wyomissing Area School District for the past 8 years. During most of those years, Mrs. Zolkowski served in a board leadership position, including the COVID-19 period. The board is required to fill this vacancy through December 2023 and will seek to do so at our next scheduled meeting. Mr. Scoboria, that leads to you.
Thank you. Just wanted to share, as we kind of get a little closer to winding down the summer, to share a few thank yous. Summer is a time that, there's a tremendous amount of work that our custodians and facilities crew do to get all of our buildings and grounds, looking good and ready. Our office staff works tirelessly to get schedules and all of our students sorted, our new registrations. Many of our teachers and paras were here for a good part of the summer in our many summer programs. So we appreciate their efforts so that those programs could continue. And certainly our administrators work year-round and are here trying to make sure everything is ready and set to start a school year. Another group that you've noticed over the last week or two is our coaches and our band leader or club advisors are starting to be on campus. So when you drive around campus, you see the fields full of our students, and that's always an exciting time as well. So I use the word exciting, but also this is a very challenging time of the year. We want to get everything done, make sure everything's in place for a really good opening. Tomorrow begins our new teacher orientation program. I know Dr. Woodard takes the lead on that, and we're going to welcome our new staff. They'll work together for a couple days. They get to work with their mentors as well and get acclimated so they can be successful. I've certainly invited all the board. Our opening day for staff is August 23rd. So that's a morning program, and we kick off around 7:30. The portion in the auditorium for any board members that are available begins about 8:30, 8:45, and that's at the junior senior high school. And I know Mrs. Harenza will be speaking on behalf and representing the board, but anybody's welcome to be there. We're really excited about the day. Dr. Lengle will be sharing a little later a presentation, and we have that weaved into our opening for our teachers as well, so that we can focus on the mental health awareness and the supports we're putting in place and have put in place and will continue to put in place for our students. So certainly looking forward to that program. And then seems like it's pretty close. I think we just hit less than 2 weeks. Is August 28th is opening day for students. So again, very thrilling, exhilarating time. A little bit nerve-wracking at times to make sure that everything's here, but we can't wait to welcome all of our students and families back. So, and again, any board members that are available, I know you balance this duty with other jobs, but if anybody would like to help us welcome students on the opening day, just, let me know, and we'll divide and conquer and make sure our students and families are welcome on the first day. So tonight we have 2 presentations that are non-voting. And the first one is Dr. Lengle will share. We spent a lot of time on action planning, and the good part now is we're implementing or seeking to implement components of that plan. So Dr. Lengle is going to share a couple updates, and I'll turn the floor over.
Thank you, Mr. Scoboria. So as Mr. Scoboria shared, I am going to talk a little bit about an update on some of our mental health initiatives. So just to give you a quick reminder of how we got here, last March I came to you all and presented on working with Dr. Ayres and some of her consultative services and what that would look like. We are really in the thick of that. There's been a lot happening, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well. And if you also recall at that time, I had presented the mental health task force some of our recommendations moving forward on what we think would improve some of our current services and supports for students. And one of the things listed in there was the need for a professional employee. We sort of created kind of a skeleton of what those duties could involve, and we had worked with Mr. Boyer on looking at where in the budget could that potentially fit. So I'm coming back to you tonight to talk about everything that's been happening, but then to end with where we are with kind of teasing out what that position could potentially do for us. So then from May to June, Dr. Ayres met with representatives from a number of our stakeholder groups. We did have school board directors in there, administration, counselors, staff team members, coaches, and extracurricular club advisors and parents. We had allotted about 45 minutes for each of those groups, and many of them went significantly over. And then some of our participants actually took the time to send a separate email with their thoughts that either they didn't have time to share or that came to them after the meetings. In those meetings, we ended up sharing a number of positives about the district, and then also just individual areas of needs that each of those groups saw. In July, Dr. Ayers shared her recommendations with district administration related to the strengths and areas of growth. We just got that at the very end of July, and we are working through it with her to decide exactly what those things can look like within our district. The strategic plan from last year for 2022 had goals related to our mental health initiatives from the school board of directors that included last year really identifying those needs. So that's how our task force kept coming together. We were looking at data, we were talking with multiple people. And then this year, we're really looking to develop procedures and a plan for full implementation next year, which would include that K-12 SEL curriculum, which was a goal of the school board. So I'm going to highlight some of the recommendations coming from the stakeholder group meetings and the data review from Dr. Ayers tonight, but I'm going to be coming back to you all in the fall to really go into detail about some of those recommendations. Her report's pretty significant, and the reason that we're not presenting it right now is there's so many details in it that we have to really talk with some of our groups, specifically our school counselors, as to how that could potentially work here. Dr. Ayers was an outsider looking at our school district, and we're quite unique in how we do things, mostly because we are a smaller district. So some of the highlights for you all to understand tonight is she really does feel that tier 1, you're going to see tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 talked about, and then my next slide has a visual of that I think will help for everybody to understand how we talk about these tiers. We use these tiers for what was RTII and now MTSS, so the fact that we're looking at using them as well for these types of interventions and supports just really makes it a consistent language that we're using for all of our services. So that tier 1 support is what we give to all students. And the recommendation, and really this came from the school board in some of your initiatives and goals for the district, is developing a mental health education curriculum. So that's what all students would be getting. The key there is how do we make that be fluid and have a continuity to it between all 3 buildings. It's very difficult to teach a certain concept to a 3rd grader versus an 11th grader, right? They understand things very differently, they have very different needs. But helping us to create a consistent language and goals and expectations for our students. Parent training on age-specific student needs. So we really heard from a lot of our parents. Now, remember, within those stakeholder groups, our parents were separate, so that was one of their own group. But certainly some of our school board members were parents, our teachers are parents, our coaches are parents. So we had folks coming into these meetings from many different perspectives, which was really neat to hear and see. So getting our parents training on age-specific student needs. And that would occur at the tier 1 and the tier 3 level. Again, I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Staff training to include more stakeholder groups. So we really heard that an example would be our teachers are getting really great information given to them during professional development, but maybe our coaches aren't getting quite as detailed information. And our coaches are seeing our students in those unstructured environments where sometimes it's easier to share things and learn things and build rapport with students. Consistent language, I talked about that in the use of anxiety or stress and feeling scale throughout all 3 buildings. So currently we do this in isolation in certain groups. An example would be special education. We use a specific anxiety scale, a specific stress scale, but only certain staff have that language. So if Johnny is struggling in a certain moment and a staff member who's not trained in that scale is not available, it's difficult to figure out what Johnny needs in that moment. Developing community connections for families through safe and supportive means. So we do have a district social worker currently who, through Tower Health, who works really hard to help our families make connections with community services. But this is certainly something that could be strengthened. We are struggling to get families to engage sometimes. We're struggling to get families to fill out paperwork, to, as we know, the squeaky wheel, that's what they need, and we are seeing our community services are taxed. So if you're not the parent that's calling on repeat and following up via email with certain agencies, you do get pushed to the side and you get back put on a waiting list. So figuring out ways to better support our families with that. Developing data tracking systems related to student and staff needs. So this is looking at, I just put a few examples up there, but attendance, sleep habits, homework time, test quizzes. We have a lot of data in our district. And this was, I used the word earlier with Mr. Scoboria, humbling to me. In special education, I live, eat, breathe data, right? Typically when I'm coming to you all to present something, I have tons of data to support what I'm saying. And all of our documents that we write are very data driven. As I was sharing my perspective with Dr. Ayers on what the district needs, she would say, what data do you have to support that? And I would say, it's just what I see. Well, that doesn't work, right? And so when we brought all these stakeholder groups together, that's how everyone was presenting. We were all presenting with, it's just what I know, or it's a very small sample size. So it's my daughter and her 3 friends, all have shared this same information. So we're getting a big picture view of things, but we could really tease that out more and collect data on very specific needs. So rather than me saying, I think we need an additional calm room at the high school, what data do I have to support this? How many students are currently using it? What are they using it for? What does that time look like? And then the last area, and again, these are just very big highlights of her recommendations, is more short-term group and individual services based on data. So we currently do this with our SAP and ESAP programs, which really are strengths of our district. That's where we partner with Karen, just to remind you all of that. And we do really great work through them and with them, but we certainly could use more. Meaning we have a group maybe that runs for 8 weeks, 1 time a week. Well, there might be a student who needs daily check-ins at that same level, but only for a 2 or 3 week time period. We are not currently providing that kind of intensive support to students. Go ahead, Mr. Arnst. So this is exactly what I was talking about with the tiers. So that bottom tier, which is yellow, and the top tier, which are yellow, are the areas that we're going to focus our improvements on. And the middle, I put green, meaning go, it's really good. We really have great things happening there in all 3 of our buildings. And that really was an overarching theme from all of the stakeholder groups. Everybody was really, really consistent with talking about those specific services. And that SAPES, that you'll see in the green, SAIPS, that's our student attendance improvement plans. So we do really good work with developing that initial plan with tier 2 supports. So I'll start at the very bottom, and one more thing I'll note, just for anybody who maybe doesn't know this already, that bottom tier is our everybody. That's all of our students. That middle tier, those are students who just need a little bit more, and it should be significantly less than our, all student population. And then that top tier, again, should be the smallest population of students, and those are the kiddos who need the most intensive support. And you can look at this from a family aspect as well. So that bottom tier would be all of our families. And then what we're giving families all the way at the top would be a smaller number. So I'll start on the very bottom one. And I just highlighted a few of our current strengths that we have here for everybody. If you recall back in March, that presentation, I want to say it was like 4 or 5 slides of just strengths of our district. Things we're already doing and doing well. So I just pulled out a few of them here. So we do have K-8 school counselor lessons. We have our Hope Squad and our Medium clubs at the high school. We have the Safe to Say program. And then we have a health class curriculum that includes a lot related to mental health, as well as drug and alcohol is also included in that curriculum. What we would be adding is a mental health education curriculum that ensures continuity and kind of a scope and sequence that we know things spiral and come back to kids. They don't just hear it once in 3rd grade, they'll hear it again in 5th grade, they'll hear it again in 8th grade with still age-appropriate language. And then that K-12 data collection on topic-specific needs to be reviewed and analyzed by our mental health task force. So that's those moments when, and I'll just use myself as an example, but this could be anybody within the district. So again, I say, We didn't have a common room. I went in there period 3 and there were 8 kids in there. That doesn't actually ever happen, but let's just say, as an extreme, that's what happens. Well, that might just be a one snapshot moment. I need to really tease that out so that we're putting our efforts to where the supports are really needed. And basing it on data, and basing it on data with lots of people talking about it, not just me in isolation. And then that top tier, so we currently have school-based counseling. That is through Empowerment Behavioral Health. Our numbers have skyrocketed. If you recall, we were monitoring our number of referrals early on, and I think we had 2 or 3 at the Hills, 1 at West Reading, and maybe 1 at the high school. We have gone up so high that they have added a second full-time counselor coming in here for this school year. What we are lacking there is the follow-through with some families. So I just learned the number is 27. So we have 27 students that we have referred for services, and we cannot get the family to follow through on completing the paperwork, giving approval for it. And then psychological counseling. This is really done mostly in special education, but it's done through our school psychologists, where they are providing one-on-one, direct, intensive therapeutic support to students. So this is where our greatest need is to improve with this potential additional professional employee. So conducting family needs assessments, developing additional community school parent connections, individual parent training connections, and then those intensive group and individual student services that I talked about. We currently have Officer Brindley, who is pretty phenomenal. He does really great things here. But Officer Brindley knocking on your door when the school's trying to get you to agree to counseling is not usually well received, no matter how lovely he can present himself. So we don't have people going into homes. We don't have a homeschool visitor who is knocking on doors and helping our families. Not looking at residency, not looking at your child being naughty, but simply looking at what do you need? What can we help you? Let's be a community to support your child. So this is what, based on the mental health task force recommendations as well as Dr. Ariz's recommendations, what we would potentially be looking at. And we did look at a number of options for what this could look like, and really came down to what we think is the most fiscally responsible, but also allows us to continue the uniqueness of how we present some of these solutions to some of these problems. So we would be looking to stick with Empowerment Behavioral Health, so not looking at another agency that would work in a silo or in isolation of what we already have. They would be providing us a full-time employee that would support K through 12. And then in addition, we would have 60 hours of time to use for either professional development from them or support from some of their bilingual staff. This would be incredibly helpful to us if we had a bilingual mental health professional who is able to talk with our families, support our families. Honestly, just looking at the 25 that I talked about earlier that were unable to get in counseling, some of that is a language barrier. So that would be incredibly helpful to us. And then the duties would include, I have, but not limited to, because I do think we would be really getting our money's worth with this person, with this level of knowledge and this connection to community supports and services. So this person could support that direct instruction of those social emotional skills. So that's that tier 1, that's hitting all students again. Support referrals to in-school and outside behavioral health programs. So we would be only looking for an employee who's also SAP trained. So ensuring that we're not having to backtrack on that type of training. Conducting family needs assessments. So that's not just, hi, Mrs. Smith, what can we do to help you? It's really using a data-driven approach, a script really, to find out what families need. Some families don't know what they need. So we need to know what exists and be able to put those options in front of people. Promoting the parental and guardian involvement in schools, acting as a community school liaison, Assisting with determining barriers to school attendance. So this is another significant need within the district. Many of our students with mental health needs are struggling significantly with school attendance. And then we have others that are not struggling with mental health needs in any way, but are really struggling with school attendance. We're finding more and more students who are home and are babysitting a younger sibling. That's why they're not coming to school and they're constantly missing first period. It takes us a while to build rapport with that family to find out that information to be able to support them. So someone who is available to really look at what are those barriers and how do we respond to them. And then creating those very intensive supports and services related to school attendance. And then finally, supporting that K through 12 data collection related to needs and supports and services. So that would be ensuring that if we're looking at one area at the junior senior high school, are we looking at it K-12? Are we looking at what's West Reading doing similar to that or not doing that maybe they should be doing? And then the same with the Hills to make sure again that we have that alignment. Something like the calm room. If that exists in one second grade class but not in the others, that's a problem. Or if it exists in one second grade class and not in third grade, when Johnny goes to third grade, he's losing out on a significant support that was helping him. So just ensuring that we have that continuity of supports and services. So what would the investment and the funding look like? The total cost, if in fact we were to go through empowerment behavioral health, would not exceed $51,750. Then I have the total hours in there of what that would look like. So that's using a professional staff member day of 7.5 hours a day. We would look to run this for this academic year, so through June 30th of next year. I guess that's the fiscal year actually. And we'd be looking at $30 an hour. What that would get us from Empowerment Health is someone with a mental health degree with a 4-year degree, someone who is SAP trained, and someone who has additional family-based therapy certifications. They vary on what they can look like. So there's RBTs, there's other areas that people can be certified in, and they have a number of folks there. That would also include, I apologize, that $51,000 would also include the additional 60 hours that I talked about of a bilingual mental health therapist, or mental health professional, I should say. We do have $32,000 of that already covered from a grant that we applied for last year. The additional approximately $19,000. We are hopeful that $119,000 is coming from the state. However, that has not yet been approved. Mr. Boyer, if anybody has any questions on that, would be able to answer what's going on with the state with that. I don't completely understand it, but I'm sure he does. So that leaves us with an additional $19,000 from potentially the general fund if in fact the no funding were to come through from the state. I have 2 other areas before I'll open it up for questions. So the presentation from March last year, I did develop that into a very formalized action plan. It actually mirrors Dr. Woodard's math action plan. And it is located on our website. I know that you all know this already, but I wanted to make sure you understood that our progress is being updated. It's currently being updated for our work through the summer, and then it'll be updated quarterly throughout the year. So at any time you can log on there and see all of the points that we have talked about within that action plan, how we're moving and progressing through that. And then last but not least, I had spoken briefly last March about the kind of collaboration with our Wyomissing Public Library, and that has come to fruition. So I just wanted to publicly acknowledge that we had 2 very generous anonymous donors, and we had funding additionally from the Ann Seltzer Fund through WAVE. So thankfully to those 3 folks, we have the signs. They are here. You're starting to see them pop up in your community. We really haven't advertised within the district yet, but we will as soon as folks start rolling back in next week. But the library has already started selling, so they are popping up. We plan to send out emails to staff and then social media, of course, for the community members to purchase. I will tell you that the feedback has been incredibly positive. Without giving too many details, I was contacted by somebody in our community recently, and she was very, very emotional and said that these signs, she purchased, I think, a number of them from the library. She said it's not just for folks coming by my home or driving by, it's really for my family to walk out every morning and be reminded that they are loved, that they matter, that tomorrow's a new day if today doesn't go your way. So that was really exciting to hear. And then just as a reminder, the proceeds from that purchase, from those purchases, will get us mental health resources for the library and the district. And our goal is to get some consumable things that folks can take with them. Here it'll be for students. At the library, it'll be for families. That is all that I have. Questions on anything?
Sorry.
No, go.
Because this is my professional background, I have some, I'm sorry. Okay, so when you spoke about the language barrier being an issue in parental follow-through, do we have those forms in English and
Yes.
Spanish?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, sorry, excuse me, I learned from previous presentations that I always need water, so I remember it today. And empowerment for that specific type of referral is currently using a bilingual, employee to try to support that. But what we're missing is the relationship. So it's a cold call from an agency, not connected to your school district, and so that the barrier is still existing.
And the duties that you described would be an empowerment employee?
Would be an empowerment employee looking at a 1-year contract.
Okay. And then my only other question, so for the $30 an hour rate, it's a provider with a 4-year degree, so not master's level.
Not master's, well, not necessarily master's level,
Okay.
but a minimum of a bachelor's degree.
Okay. I guess that kind of concerns me a little bit, only because, self-training is one thing, getting certifications is one thing, but most clinicians can't be licensed or have liability insurance unless they are master's level. So I just want to make sure that even though they're not a district employee, that we're covered for liability in the event anything goes awry.
So that's part of why we would not be looking for this person to supplant our already employed social worker.
Okay.
And if you recall, just another brief update, we are looking at, so we have the full-time social worker from Tower Health, Mrs. Lascala. You probably all know her. She's been here forever, and everyone thinks she's a Wyomissing employee. She is continuing here and does K-12 work for us. We also have somebody in our emotional support classroom who's working toward a certification, and we are looking at a potential emergency certification through the state for her to be able to share some of those direct social work services. So there's new requirements coming out for school districts related to social workers. There's going to be a PDE certification similar to, I have a supervisory certification to be able to do my job. Teachers have a K-6 elementary education certification. There's a new social work certification coming out. It was supposed to actually be due this year, I believe, and they've now kind of punted to next year.
26.
So, yeah, there's a lot of new requirements coming out.
Okay. So this would be kind of, the empowerment person would kind of be like a case manager. They wouldn't be doing direct service.
They could
with
do
the
some
student.
direct, but it would be more of group direct. But yes, more of
Reaching
case
out.
management, and
Okay.
more supporting all students as opposed to direct therapy.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Can I just piggyback? I don't want to interrupt anybody, but I think you mentioned this, Dr. Lengle, and I may have missed this one part. So, empowerment has already been in our district, I think, through last year.
Correct.
And they provide a service already where students are getting one-on-one individual therapy here at the school. So this one replaced that. Certainly we continue. I think you cited a number that those numbers, I think they rose through the year.
Significant.
Started out pretty slow, and then our counselors and others helped students get aligned to that service. So, we looked at this, I believe, as empowerment could have a stronger array of services. We'd still be recommending our students, if they don't have services outside the district, for those services here. This fills that gap of getting out to the homes as well. So it's, Empowerment offers an array of services. This would allow us to get a portion of those services that we currently don't have. But we were very satisfied with the number of students we were, I think just through 1 year, able to get. And we hope that number, based on our data that we've collected, there is need. So we assume that number will continue to increase as we break down some of those barriers. So again, we were very pleased with Empowerment, and this can give us the opportunity to get more students, more families direct services. So I just wanted to clarify, I know that this is your area, so you.
That's all true. And I will tell you, Empowerment really has been lovely to work with. In many of my county-wide meetings, I learn of districts where they hit a number, say it's 30 on a caseload, and if you're 31, you're on a wait list. They have not made us go waitlisted yet. Now, certainly that could happen. There's only so many counselors that work there, but for now, they just went right ahead and added a second employee for us. And that will continue. We don't pay for that currently, other than the usage of our space, maybe some copying for different referral forms and such. But that's all done through students' insurance and medical assistance. So we don't currently pay for that direct psychological counseling or school-based counseling.
And this is a 1-year contract, and then every year we'll look at it and
Correct.
see if we bring it in-house eventually, or
Yeah.
get more people if we need it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Moore, do you have any matching information from the state about funding?
Well, the real funding of the $119,000, we had budget for that. As you know, the state does the budget per se. The fiscal and school code, I think, are still out there yet to be signed based upon what they're doing, school vouchers. So that new funding, since it's new funding, has not been officially approved, so we do not know if we got it or how much there is yet. So the
But
basic
as far as the budget, so I would assume we have a pretty good feel on the fact that we will get it.
the hopeful. Yeah. So, but it has not officially been approved. With the 32,000, excuse me, that's from the mental health grant that was for last year. That's a 2-year period. So we have some carryover from the 22-23 school year that we're going to use for this initiative this year. If it comes down to it to $19,000 or $19,750, that would be the difference. We have contingency money that we all know we have aside that we can use towards, if the board wants to go forward with this initiative, we can use that money.
Is that grant renewable, or is that a grant we have to apply for again, or we don't know?
Well, technically we didn't apply for that grant. That was provided in the budget last year. We had to submit a plan to spend the money, but it was provided, a fixed amount was provided, it was not competitive.
Okay.
So that's what the $119,000 that we just spoke about, that would be the supplanting grant or initiative for mental health that would take over, in addition to the 2-year grant of this year, this being the second year, that would be further money for this year. I'm not sure if that's a 2-year yet or not. It could just be 1 year. We plan to use it in 1 year when we budgeted for the 23-24 school year. But as we get further development, that plan could change things.
So this would be funded, by this grant initially, but then we would have to renew and look and see, because I'm thinking this is going to be something that is going to be certainly worthwhile and probably used more and more. So it's going to have to be something eventually we're going to have to budget for, and we don't know that there's going to be mental health
Correct.
grants coming.
We would either have to budget for through the general fund, and that's just in discussions that we would have starting in November, how we're going to look at it. Or if, once again, Governor Shapiro, he seems to be very high on the mental health funding part, providing, depending on what the outlook is for next year, it could just be built in as far as, we now get this, because technically this would be the second year that mental health funding has been provided. As a non-competitive grant, meaning that the money's there, this is your allotment, you need to come up with a plan of how you're going to spend it and present that to the
Right,
state.
but you're not up against other people
Correct.
to receive the funding.
There's not a pot of money that all of a sudden, hey, your plan's better than my plan,
Right.
I get a larger portion of the funding. It appears that with this initiative, because now it's 2 years in a row that money has been made available, it's almost guaranteed that hopefully year 3, year 4, this can kind of like similar with the free breakfast initiative.
Right.
So over COVID, all lunch and breakfast was free. That kind of dried up. The state said we're going to keep providing free breakfast. It was available last year. It's been made available this year. I can't see us going backwards and saying, oh, all of a sudden we're going to have to start paying for breakfast. So I can't see that this money we all of a sudden say, well, you know what, it was really great, but now we're going to stop funding it. We kind of already put that ship in motion when it comes to this.
Yeah, and I certainly think it's a really important position. It's just wanting to know in the back of my mind, okay, this is another full-time position to add to the budget. So just,
Well, if we can
I certainly think it's very important.
If we can keep it steered towards and we're getting the services that the team needs through empowerment, probably a recommendation to go through there as much as possible. It avoids putting in a position on the books that for if something would happen, then we're carrying that. So, it just depends on the needs of where we are at the time. Right, that's something that we just have to weigh as this 1-year agreement comes to an end, where our needs are, how is it going?
And if you mentioned this, forgive me, but I know several years ago there was the block grant, and that started out as one-time money, and then it's become pretty much consistent money. I think, as Mr. Boyer said, because you rely on it, it was impossible to go backwards. So the state has provided that block grant. And when this rolled out, that was initially our understanding that this would be a base, and more than likely, you may see additions, you may not see additions, but you would hopefully not see that return back. So we were lucky that about 15 legislators came here about 2 weeks ago. They asked for a tour. We only got about 40 minutes, but we certainly did emphasize that these are the kinds of things we need clarity on, because our kids have needs. Our board is meeting to determine how to meet those needs. We would very much appreciate the state resolving some of these outstanding budget issues so that we can plan and be secure and know. So we're hopeful. We're certainly hearing good feedback back on this, but we can give you an update as soon as we know more about the status of this in the budget.
The only other comment that I have, based on my experience, a lot of these programs tend to be geared toward middle and high school, because those are like key developmental stages when we look at our students. However, I've also seen an increase in behavioral issues and other family concerns at the elementary level. And I think we do a nice job of having things across levels. But I would like to see, especially with the data collection, there's not a lot out there on how to collect data on elementary students. As they get older, they can do the PACE surveys. Parents are a little more, they're involved with coaching, and the coaches can come and give you information. But for our littles, that it's basically the classroom teacher that sees them for the majority of the day, a simple way for them to identify problem areas specific to mental health.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It doesn't exist. There isn't, I can't call a publishing company and say, can I have your surveys on this or your data collection sheets on this? It doesn't exist. So it is going to be, and it's easier for a district like us to do because we are small. We can be very student specific to Wyomissing and very community specific to Wyomissing. But we have to get creative on how we're collecting that data.
Just a thank you, this is great information. Quick question, everything here is after the fact, it seems to be mental health, is to help those people who have mental health issues. What are we doing, what can we do to try to lessen those mental health issues? A lot of these are common themes I'm sure the kids are experiencing. So what are we doing from an education
That's
standpoint?
Dr. Ayers' main recommendation, that we need to be proactive. We need to start teaching how do you manage your own emotions, how do you regulate your own feelings in your own body as a 5-year-old. There are ways to teach that. There's actual scientifically researched ways to teach that to 5-year-olds. And so, collectively in her work with school districts in New Jersey and now coming here, that's really, I think, what she's seeing most frequently. It's that we need to start with all kids and we need to start young. So we're not waiting until they have health class in 8th grade. We are teaching the concept of mental health, the concept of coping, the concept of regulating, and what it feels like to be dysregulated. What does it look like to be dysregulated? That we're teaching that at much younger ages. So the goal really would be that this year we start to roll out, and this will come in the next presentation, but that we roll out a plan of how we would implement this type of instruction to all kids starting next year.
You know, for several years, we have K-8 guidance lessons, and certainly there are some lessons that we are hitting strategically for those younger grades, but one of the big points is having a more robust and aligned curriculum K-12. So that's a goal that we'll be working on. I know Dr. Lengle will be back in front of you kind of giving updates as we look to strengthen what we are doing for all students, more on that proactive side, to make sure that we are all becoming more knowledgeable as a community. So there will be more updates. We weren't sure, we put fall because it could be September, October. We know there's other topics, but certainly we expect to have multiple presentations with Dr. Lengle to work through the components of the action plan. Definitely more to follow.
So if there's no other questions, the goal would be to put a proposed contract on the next agenda. It's not on this agenda today. To hopefully have empowerment, have a person available to start with us as soon as possible, pending board approval.
Perhaps you mentioned this, but how hard are these specific folks to find? I mean, it seems workforce is the biggest issue we can improve.
Yeah, so part of this is being very creative to not be looking for a licensed social worker or any of the other master's degree level licensed professionals. Those are nearly impossible to find and absolutely impossible to find at $30 an hour. So we are trying to be very creative, and certainly that was part of what I was looking at when I was trying to figure out how would we go about this. There are some agencies out there that provide similar services, but almost all of them are about double the cost of what we would be looking at. So do I think they're going to have somebody? I do. I have talked obviously with them about, is this even a possibility of something that could exist? And the answer is yes.
Sorry.
Switching gears, our next item is, so thank you, Dr. Lengle, again. So our next item, for anybody who's been over at the Hills lately or throughout the junior senior high school, we've all been following construction projects. And the last few weeks, I think I've been over at the Hills about 3 times a week, got over there today, saw a lot of good activity. Well, we haven't been together as a board since, I think it was late June. So as you recall, last spring, Mr. Cafoncelli was coming in every meeting or every other meeting to give updates. So certainly, he's here tonight to give an update with some good news and also some where are we going in terms of the project. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Cafoncelli.
Thank you, Mr. Scoboria. We'll start at the high school. This is pretty brief. A couple of the outstanding items are wayfinding signage. We are expecting them mid-September, maybe late September. I recently received the shop drawings, making sure everything was correct. So mid to late September, we should have them around the high school installed. The punch list, very few items. We got about a page and a half of mostly touch-up paint, couple ceiling tiles, nothing major. Everything should be accomplished before the 28th. So the punch list will be done by then. Terrazzo floor in the cafeteria, that has been completed. That was completed late June, early July. That looks good. The 8 windows that we were waiting on, they have been installed and they're ready to go. Classroom furniture, we are waiting on about 6 pieces, but none of them are mission critical to day one. Conductor stand, a couple other minor items, but we're ready to go for day one as of right now. You can go, thank you, Scott. The picture on the left is a traditional classroom. That was the majority of the work. Desks and chairs. Some of the chairs and desks ranged back to the late 70s, early 80s. They really held up. We got our money's worth out. Some classrooms have tables like you see here in the boardroom with chairs, and the art room has some specific furniture for art. but the bulk of the furniture you see is in that picture to the left. The picture on the right is the one piece of furniture that was missing in the library. It came, I believe it was late June, and now we are complete, and that was part of the contract. So the picture on the left, on the right, was part of the contract through URIG. The picture on the left was directly through the district, and both furniture projects went pretty well. Thank you to my team working around them and still being able to get the buildings cleaned in time was a task in itself. Any questions about the high school?
Yeah, I just want to add on the high school note, that group that came through, we were fortunate. It was about 15 legislators and about 15 others. This is a group of about 30 plus, and most had never been anywhere near our district. So they were very impressed, and they toured this building because they wanted to see the secondary building. But very complimentary, very impressed. The mix of the old architecture that you can't replicate, as well as new spaces that meet the instruction that we're trying to do today. So they were very thankful. They asked if we have an interior decorator, and I said no, we just have a very dedicated board and community that wants to make sure this building stays with all the charm. So I just wanted to pass that on. They were really impressed going through and seeing our building here. So.
And in addition to the project, we also completed one of the projects that was on the capital plan, which is replacing the furniture in the admin area. So not the furniture, the carpet, guidance, and also the athletics side has new carpet as of Friday. So that went very well as well. All right, now the hills. This is a list you've seen many times. I would say 80% of this list we went over in June. Down to the bottom, reception window complete, mailbox, and cafeteria painting. Those were three substantial items that we were talking about back in June. They have now been completed. Here are some pictures if you want to go to the next one, Mr. Arnst. Mailboxes are on your top left. In the middle, if you remember on some of the top middle, some of the tours, that room had two different colored carpets in it. Now it has the correct carpet tile in it. Bottom left, cafeteria. There is some painting, some minor touch-ups to be done, but for the most part, that room is ready to go and looking pretty good. Middle, bottom, you have the reception window that still needed the trim work. The trim work has been installed and is functional. We also received the furniture for the office, so if you haven't been in the office lately, it looks a lot better. The newer furniture, the flow is there, and those two secretaries are very happy. The one on the right is our VCT tile. They delivered it. I believe that was about 2 weeks ago now. So we have all the tile for the hallway that they're scheduled to replace next summer. They also delivered the attic stock. That's what you can see in the front there. Those are extra carpet tiles in case we ever need them. So as of right now, that project is scheduled for really the last teacher day in June. And now Mr. Arnst, next please. Here are some of the outstanding items. Before I go into these, I will say the last 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, I've seen a different approach to manpower. There's been some productive weeks. We've had people there almost every day, well, really every day, and some days we've had crews as large as 10. So Parado's really showed some effort the last couple weeks to getting this done by the 28th. So some of the outstanding items: paving, repairs. This is the 3rd and 4th grade playground. When they were basically doing all the stormwater installation, they had to bring large triaxles, loaders, you name it, to the back of the building. They created divots and basically damaged our asphalt. That repair work is happening tomorrow. I confirmed directly with the asphalt contractor today, and he will be on site tomorrow. So hopefully by the end of the week, that is completed. He will also be handling the asphalt cleaning and seal coat. This is primarily down by the basement and those where they basically had all their lay down area, where the water silo was, where the pods were. That all needs to be cleaned up and seal coated just like the rest of the parking lot. I'm also told those silos, that one is on the back, I'm just gonna call it a back pad in the back of the building, and down by the parking lot, they are gonna be going this week as well, is what I'm being told. So this week could be a good week from the site perspective as well. Anybody that's been over there today, or really the rest of the week, you'll see a lot of landscaping happening. As you know, when we reconfigured the front, we lost several trees. We also had to reconfigure some of the beds. We have a company on site. Now this is outside the contract. This is directly through me. On site planting trees and getting the front of the building to be a little bit more appealing. As far as the missing S, I don't have that in my presentation, but I have a signed company and we will be getting the S hopefully within the next 2 weeks. So either around the start of school or right at the beginning of the school from the Wyomissing Hills logo, or sign I should say. Fencing, we've talked about this a lot, the 2 fences that go around the 2 retention basins, the screening fence that go around the dumpsters that are right there by the cafeteria, and then the fence around the autistic playground in the back of the building. They were ordered as of last Wednesday, and they're about 3 to 4 weeks out. So when they come in, we'll work with the contractor to make sure they're not in our way during entry or dismissal. And Dr. Rickey and I already have a plan for how that's going to look. So I don't have any worries about that. Flagpole, parts of it is on site. It's coming in many boxes, and I expected the rest of it this week, and then they just have to install it. So that shouldn't be a big deal. Remaining tackboard and whiteboard. We have one tackboard and whiteboard, one tackboard, one whiteboard that needs to be installed in the 4th grade wing. The punch list, after last week, I have not received a revised copy, but last week we had about 10 painters and a bunch of guys doing patching. So I expect the punch list to be reduced quite substantially. I hope to have that paperwork this week. They had a big crew there, and they were focusing on classrooms, they were focusing on high-profile areas. The basement. This is directly related to the one change order that we're going to talk about in a couple slides. We had an inspection after they finished the generator room, and the the code inspector said we needed a fire damper to be installed in that room. It was about $2,000, but it was a code requirement. So once that is completed and some fire caulking, the basement will be completed. So I expect that to be done for the start of school. We spoke about the VCT, we have the tile, it's slated for 2024. So from this list, I expect everything but the fencing, and that's what I'm being told by the contractor, to be done before the start of school. If you were to go in the building today, there's only really one hallway that we're still in. It's the 1st and 2nd grade hallway, and by Wednesday we'll be out of there. My team has worked nights, weekends, and around the teachers' schedules to do everything we could to make that building as nice as we could inside. I know the flooring in the hallways was definitely an eyesore. Many of you saw it. I think we made it look a little better. Put a couple extra coats of wax on it. I think it looks a little better in there. Hopefully it will get us through the school year. But for the most part, that building should be ready to go by Wednesday. And from a cleaning perspective. And then I'm in contact every single day with the project manager. We've had a couple, one was on vacation, we had another one step in and help us out. But I've seen a lot of good effort in the month of August. I'm as frustrated as you guys. I wish I would have saw that back in June, even May. But they've come to the table now, and we're getting there. I feel confident these items that I talked about should be good by the end of the month if they fall through. Any questions on all of that? Okay. I'd be happy to take anybody through. You know the next one.
So just in terms of tours, I know we're gonna, Mr. Boyle will probably jump in and talk about money. So we do want to talk about tours, and it's been a little while for the board. I wasn't cutting off the money. That's but we just want to work around, one of the tricks right now is that the schools are very busy. So we finished summer programming, but as you know now, it's very heavy with teachers. I went there today and I got excited because the parking lot was full. I thought they were all contractors, and Mike said, no, that's all teachers, which is still exciting because they're getting ready. But you know, in terms of the one thing we want to work with is the tours. I know at nights and weekends we're trying to do that lobby area and some of the common hallways. So you know, why don't you and I speak, and we'll throw some dates out. Maybe throw 2 or 3 dates out, and if 2 or 3 of the board members could make it on any one of those dates, we'll just take you through. And if you miss them all, just let us know, and we'll take you through individually. So we'll put a couple out to the group around that cleaning schedule, and then you know, contact Mr. Cafoncelli or myself, and we'll always get you through.
Absolutely.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I'll cut off the money. So.
Take it away, Mr. Moore.
Not much has changed. We had a few pay apps come through, and there were just some of the contractors have finished up what they were doing, so nothing large as we paid recently. So this really hasn't changed too much. We're still kind of on target, that bottom number of $24,698,000. The big thing, if you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Is that the proposed for WEC, there are still some change orders hanging out there. We do have one officially that we've been holding that the board needs to approve, and we'll review it. We have our facilities committee meeting this month. That's for about $1,996. The 145 or 145 minus the 1,996. That's still out there in limbo. That's just some work that I think Parado, those are change orders that Parado is should be putting through at some point. We have not seen the official change order yet. Just like with their pay apps, they haven't put through their pay apps properly yet. So nothing has gone out to Parado at the current time. So really, from the last time we went over these 2 slides, nothing has really changed significantly because we're still holding those funds yet.
The 145,000 we expect to decrease significantly. This is a change order from months back of basically the site work on the plans was incorrect, and there were things that needed to be done to build the playground, to put in the outside lighting, storm drains, things of that nature. So this is going to be one of those ones that qualify for the 15%. But the architect and contractor are going back and forth to really make sure that number is correct. And I expect it to be much less than that. Plus, we are expecting a few credits from Parado for areas that basically were taken out of the contract. So that's kind of a worst case scenario number, and I plan to, the next facilities committee meeting, we'll probably hopefully have that honed in and have a number that is going to affect.
So just as a reminder, this number, when you see that it's a 1.2 over budget, that's specifically to the contingency line item that was in the budget, not the entire project. And this does not reflect any of those credits, the 15% credits coming back from the architect and the engineer, or it does not reflect any of the days that they were over that we did not have significant use of the building. Those credits are not reflected in any of these numbers yet. So I'm just putting that as a little asterisk to all this.
And real quick, the next slide, just so we can get this on the board agenda, get this moving. This is that change order I spoke about earlier for the fire damper down in the generator room. It was not in the cost of it was not in the base project. This was a code official requirement. It is not eligible for 15%, and it's $1,996. If there's not any objections, I'd like to put this on the agenda for the next business meeting. That's all I have, Mr. Spore.
Thank you. So we'll get those. Thank you, Mr. Cafoncelli, for the information, and Mr. Boyer, and we'll get some dates out to the board for tours, and Today was exciting because there was trees going in and a lot of activity, and so hopefully over the next couple weeks we keep that momentum going. So thank you. So the next few items are kind of standard, you know, agenda items. So the first area is finance and facilities, and it is recommended that the Board of School Directors approve and ratify the following finance and facility items, numbers 1 through 12.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Second. Any discussion?
Yeah, quick question, I'm just looking at this, and this is not anything new, as we look at news story. Does it seem like we have one or two more of these than we normally do, or is this our normal number? So I'm looking at that and doing the math here. Here's the one that's 80,000, and the one before it's 90,000. You know, are these all full year? These first three that are news story, and
Coleman Learning Academy.
Hogan, yeah, thank you.
They're all, they're no new contracts. They're all students who previously did that.
Okay. So they're there for a full year again?
Well, not necessarily a full year, they're evaluated, for example, well, I won't say which one specifically, but there is one that's currently going through an evaluation process to attempt to transition back here. So if that were to happen, we don't have to pay the year out, we would stop paying for the day that the student transitions back.
And I assume that difference from 315 to 383 to 4, whatever, is just the services that it requires for each of those.
Correct, yeah, in related services, so speech, OT, PT,
Right.
paraprofessional support, or behavior support.
Great, thank you.
Any other discussion? Mr. Boyer, can I roll call please?
Mrs. McAvoy.
Yes.
Mrs. Phillips.
Yes.
Mr. Pottieger.
Yes.
Mr. Redner.
Yes.
Mrs. Keller.
Yes.
Mrs. Kuhn.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
The next section is personnel policy. It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approve and ratify the following personnel and policy items as presented, and that's numbers 1 through 6.
Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Second. Any discussion? Okay, Mr. Boyer? That's okay.
Mrs. Phillips.
Yes.
Mr. Pottieger.
Yes.
Mr. Redner.
Yes.
Mrs. Keller.
Yes.
Mrs. Kuhn.
Yes.
Mrs. McAvoy.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Any old business? Is there any new business? There are no right-to-know requests. Any updates from organizations? WAEA? Okay. All right, then we are at a point where we can make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, meeting adjourned.